Welcome to another episode of Sonic Discovery. I am your host, David Correa, and on this episode we'll be going over albums from Ty Segall, Rhye, and the debut from Rich Brian. Hey guys, welcome to another episode. Thanks so much for clicking on the show. I hope that once we go through these reviews, you discover something that you guys will really like and give a listen to. Opening up the show, we have the 10th album from LA rocker Ty Segall. This is called Freedom's Goblin. So like I mentioned, this is the 10th album from Mr. Segall, and unfortunately I haven't really had a chance to listen to most of them because they're not really available on streaming sites. But just recently I found out that they're finally available on Apple Music. So I got a chance to listen to his last album, which came out last January, his self-titled album, which was great. If you have Apple Music, I recommend you guys go check that out. And definitely, if you have this, you should give this a listen, because this was one of the best albums that I've heard so far this year. I really enjoyed it. The album, Freedom's Goblin, just kind of focuses on the freedom that he feels to kind of venture into all different types of music. I guess before in the past, he's really focused on just keeping it to, certain sounds. Each album has like an identity, but here he's just kind of throwing it all out there. It is a pretty long listen. It's 74 minutes, but within those 74 minutes, he does cover, like I said, a lot of sound. So first we're going to start off by going over some of my personal favorites. The opening track, Fanny Dog, has a nice growl to it with the distortion of the guitar. This also has guitar solos, piano, and a pretty long outro. Very much kind of in a classic rock vibe. This is just simply about his dog and just him saying how, he doesn't need anybody else because he has his dog and his dog's always going to be loyal to him. Rain opens up pretty mellow with just some piano and some drums. And then on the chorus, these horns come blaring in. And then throughout, there's different parts here where the horns just kind of go a little crazy. Him living here in LA, you get a lot of sunlight. And on here, he's just asking for just a day or so in which it can be gloomy and we can get a bit of rain. Everyone's a Winner is a cover song. This was originally done by the band Hot Chocolate, and it has a nice fuzz to it. Also incorporating different percussion, and has a pretty long outro that I liked. On here he's talking about his girl, and basically she's a pretty hot one, and makes him feel like a winner by having her on his side. When Mommy Kills You is a shorter, punchier number with more of a garage rock sound and a nice fuzz on the guitars. This one kind of talks about abuse. It sounds to me like it's a boy and he lives in an abusive home with his mom, and she just kind of sleeps with different guys all the time, and he's just looking forward to that day when he's older and he can have his own freedom. My Lady's on Fire is a single release from this album. It's more of an acoustic-based track and has more of a classic rock vibe. I did like the sax that is introduced into this song, and a little further along, the sax and the guitar kind of do like this little dual thing, which I really liked. Alta is one that is mostly instrumental, and it has a heavy crunch to it. It almost kind of gave me like a grungy vibe. This was a personal highlight for me. And on here, I believe he's talking about the earth and how beautiful it must have been before man, ever, landed here and kind of messed things up. Cry, Cry, Cry is another acoustic-based track. And this one kind of gave me like a Beatles vibe, especially on the outro when they kind of stick on a little part that just keeps repeating cry, cry, cry. On here he states that although you find true love, there's still going to be moments in which tears are shed. The Last Waltz was one that was rhythmically a little different. It does kind of have like a waltz here, and I did like the twinkling piano that's playing over it. This one lyrically is a little sadder. He's talking about a couple who, I think there was a bomb that went off and killed his wife, and now the only thing the guy can think of is how to take his own life to be with his wife once again. Prison was a short instrumental track that was only about a minute, and I didn't really care for it, but this one kind of connects to the next song, which is Talkin' 3, which I liked a lot more. This one also kind of has more of a freak out with the horns that keep blaring all the way through, and on this one, he is talking about someone that has real low self-esteem. The main pretender also has a horn that's incorporated, and there's times where it's off and it's blaring, but it also is part of the hook, and it provides a little earworm that kind of catches your attention. I'm Free is another acoustic-based track that gave me a Beatles vibe, and on here he's celebrating his newfound freedom. And the closing track, And Good Night, which is 12 minutes long, and this one is mostly instrumental. It incorporates a lot of jamming into here, and I liked it just because it really shows you what you can do with a song and the variety you can add to it to not have it be boring. Because you'd think 12 minutes is a long time, but when it's done, you almost could have this song be another 10 minutes even longer. After that, we have songs that were still pretty good, not the best, but still worth mentioning. Despoiler of Cadaver has a funkiness to the groove, and also the guitar here has kind of like a wah-wah, which gives it like a disco feel. Meaning has a kind of like a long intro here that's a little odd, and then it shifts into this really punchy punk song that's not even sung by Ty. It has a female singer, and on here, she's just basically telling this guy that he's full of shit. You Say All the Nice Things is an acoustic track that has some pretty cool instrumental breaks on here. And on this track, he's talking about a girl that always seems to say the right thing to keep him around. And lastly, we have She, which is more of like a grungy sound, and this one is mostly instrumental and just has a lot of jamming on the song. To close things out, I was a big fan of this album. Again, it's long, it's 74 minutes, but within those 74 minutes, he covers a lot of sound, a lot of variety. I gave this album an 8.5 out of 10, so it comes with a high personal recommendation. Up next for review, we have the second release from Rhye. This is called Blood. Now, Rhye made a little splash back in 2013 when they released their debut album, which was called Woman. And that one included the kind of minor hits, The Fall, Open, and Last Dance. Now, it's kind of like a really smooth R&B sound, a sound that's also kind of referred to as Quiet Storm. So this is R&B, but with more of a live instrumentation to it. You can kind of think of Sade, who is probably the most popular band in that style. And on that album, the lead singer, Milos, he worked with his partner, Robin Hannibal. But that is not the case for this release. It's basically Milos with a bunch of different musicians helping him out on this project. This was a little different from the debut. The debut kind of kept things a little light. There were some moments there where you kind of were swaying a bit and you could kind of dance to these songs. But I felt like this one maybe incorporates a little bit more of those songs. I felt like they faltered a little on some of the ballads on this album, but still pretty good stuff. First, let's go into the songs that I thought were the best, my personal favorites. First up, we have the track Taste, which is more of an upbeat song, and this one has like a light funkiness to it. On here, he's asking his lover if he's really prepared to love the real him. Count to 5 is more of a mid-tempo song, but this one also kind of has like a funkiness to the groove. and also a little burst of fuzzy guitar strums, which I liked. On here, him and his lover are playing this little game and figuring out who's gonna make the first move. Stay Safe was a personal favorite of mine. This one has a real nice smoothness to it, and Milos, I haven't mentioned before, but he has this really beautiful high voice. You almost will be confused when listening to this because you'll think that it's a woman, but he has this register where his voice just kind of goes in and it floats, and this one kind of incorporates that a lot. His voice kind of fits into this nice little pockets. On here, he's telling his lover to really, don't hold back anymore and really just embrace the love and just go into it fully. Phoenix here also kind of has some funkiness to it, and we have the bass and the guitar a little bit more prominently, and this one also has a pretty nice instrumental break. And I really like the closing track, Sinful, which opens up with this little acoustic guitar line that remains throughout the whole song. It also does include some strings, and as it continues, the strings become a lot more expressive and really slashing through the track. Then there were a bunch of other songs that were okay, still worth mentioning. The opening track, Waste. This is more of a mid-tempo, light pop song, and what I liked about this one is that it incorporates strings, but not just bowed, but it has these nice sections where you hear them plucked as well. Here he's talking about a relationship that's going through some changes. Feel Your Weight was one that really reminded me of Sade, and it has a nice faster tempo, but the keys on here, the little synth line, it's a little too simple, and it just doesn't do enough to really grab my attention fully. Please is a slower ballad that does kind of have like a snappy beat, and on here he's saying that he's sorry for really saying the wrong thing. Song for You is a mellow guitar-driven track that has this nice little piano line that kind of hovers above it. On this one, he's talking about really being there for his lover for whenever they need him. And lastly, we have the track Blood Knows, which is a mellower track and has more of that quiet storm sound, so the guitar is a lot more prominent. And on here, he's saying that passion that you see from him, that just shows that he cares a lot. To close out the album, it wasn't as strong as the other one because it didn't have those songs that were as immediate as The Fall, but still, a pretty good second album from Rhye. This is going to get a score of a 7 out of 10 from me, so one worth giving a few listens to. Last album up for review, we have the debut album from Rich Brian. This is called Amen. Now, Rich Brian is an Indonesian rapper that hasn't really been rapping for a long time. He actually learned English from YouTube videos and watching TV. But he did have a viral hit with the song Dat Stick. And when he did have that hit, he was going under the name Rich Chiga, which, in hindsight, maybe wasn't the best choice. So he decided to go by his real name, Brian. So hence the name Rich Brian. And, when he was coming up with this album, he was only kind of thinking about 8 songs or so. But the more he kept recording, he kept coming out with more songs. So he decided to just, instead of doing an EP, throw out a full album. But he has mentioned in the press that, he didn't really go into it thinking it was a full album. So it's not as concise as he wishes it could be. And that's definitely something that you hear from this project. Although he hasn't been rapping for a long time, there are still tracks on here that I thought were pretty great. Like the song Cold, which is actually track number 2. On here, the production is pretty good. And I really like it when it has these guitar wailing sounds that are incorporated into the chorus. Here, his flow is all right, but it gets going a lot more on verse 2. And occasionally, you get some pretty witty lines coming through. One of the better bangers from this album is the song Attention, which has a feature from Offset. And Offset is a member of the Migos, and like I mentioned on last episode, Migos are everywhere. On here, they're both expressing their success and them really having to cope with it. See Me was one of the singles released from this project, and this has a smoother production on it and a more comfortable flow from Brian. Little Prince featuring Nicki has more of an R&B production, as both of them discuss having to adjust to them suddenly becoming famous. The opening track, Amen, has some parts on here where it gets a little bit faster and a little bit more aggressive, and I like that. But when it slows down, I feel like the production kind of falls apart a bit. Occupied had some pretty good production on here. I was especially fond of some of the synth lines that come through a little bit more. On here, he's showing off a little bit more of his good flow and really kind of bragging about it. Glow Like That, which was the leading single from this project, is here we kind of get more of a depressed Brian as he's reflecting on a relationship that just simply didn't work out. Trespass is a bit of a harder beat here as he's, really talking trash about those people that, didn't really give him the time of day before, but now that he's reached some success, are all of a sudden hitting him up. And then the closing track, Arizona, which features vocals from August 08, and this is more of a slower R&B sound, but halfway through, it kind of switches up into something a little bit spacier. Overall, I gotta give some props to Brian because, for a debut album, it wasn't too bad. And looking over some of the notes, he did handle most of the production on this album himself. So, that deserves something. This is gonna get a score of a 6 out of 10 from me. So, one, that if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, maybe just focus on those tracks that I mentioned earlier on. Well, guys, that does it for another episode. If you liked what I talked about, then go ahead and hit the like button. If you have any recommendations of albums you'd like for me to review, then make sure to leave a comment for that. And always, if you like it too, go ahead and hit subscribe. On the next episode, we'll be talking about music from Justin Timberlake, Franz Ferdinand, and No Age.